Welcome to Corpse Club, the official podcast of DailyDead.com. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jonathan James, and I'm joined today by Tamika Jones, Derek Anderson, and Bryan Christopher. This episode will be dedicated to holiday horrors and the Black Christmas movies, 1974, 2006, and 2019. So we'll be discussing those. But before we get to that, I always have fun with it. Hopefully our listeners have fun with it as well. But I like to know what my co-hosts are doing for the holidays, specifically when it comes to movies and specifically when it comes to horror. So Tamika and Derek, I know we talked a little bit about some of the stuff we watched as a bonus episode, but this one's for everybody. But I will give Bryan his chance first, and I'll ask him, Bryan, have you started watching any holiday horror movies? Is it a big thing for you? And if so, what have you been watching?
Not so much with the holiday horror. Usually Christmas is more, I lean towards the non-horror stuff. So started off, actually this last weekend, I saw The Thin Man, which is kind of tangentially a Christmas movie. And then usually my wife and I load up Christmas Eve on some of they're classics in our house. So Scrooged, usually Die Hard works its way in there. We'll do we might be one of 5 people who like the Jim Carrey version of The Grinch, so we'll watch those. I will say my one big holiday horror, other than kind of what we're going to be spotlighting later, is Christmas Evil. I absolutely love that movie. Scott and I did a commentary on it. I think actually that was our first bonus members only commentary that we ever did. And it's just that movie is just so delightfully twisted, and it's hard to describe, because I wouldn't even say it's a slasher movie, because I think only 2, maybe 3 people die in it. And then, of course, for anybody who's seen it, that ending with the quote unquote sleigh going off into the sky. It's just a really weird movie, capped off by the fact that the lead in it is played by Fiona Apple's dad. So just like everything about that movie is weird in all the right ways for me.
That movie is it's so good. We talk about it every time we get a chance. That was actually probably that was the first Christmas horror movie I watched this year. I haven't seen many, but it was the first one I watched. I have it on Blu-ray. I think it's on Shudder, or I bought it on Amazon because I was watching it, I know, digitally, and then the disc as well. But yeah, I can't get enough of that one.
I can confirm I'm one of the other 5 people who like the Jim Carrey, Ron Howard Grinch movie.
Thank you, Derek.
I don't even remember it. I saw it in theaters, and that was it.
I think it's also because I was younger when it came out, so that was the one that was like, when I was a kid, that was the Grinch movie. And then, of course, the animated one was played on TV, but there was just a lot of replay, I think, on TV around that time for that movie. And there's kind of some horror aspects to it if you think about it.
Well, there actually is. I can make a solid horror connection to that movie, to the horror community. The scene, Derek, do you know where he's kind of going on his rampage, and he shoos these 2 tiny little Whos that are driving this little car around, and he scooches them out of it and drives it around and winds up blowing it up?
Yep.
So do you know who the little miniature woman is that he shoos out of that car?
No.
Caroline Stretch Williams from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is the little woman who gets out of that car.
Whoa. Okay.
So anybody, if you are watching that, just remember there is horror royalty in that movie.
Wow. So is this technically in the Texas Chainsaw universe then? Or is this...
Oh, my God.
I mean, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be.
I like this. I like this crossover potential.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That is amazing. God. You never know. That's like a little gift for horror lovers that watch that movie.
Both of us.
And Rick Baker did a lot of the makeup effects for that, I believe. So there's another connection.
Yep.
Wow. There you go. So, Tamika, how about you? What have you been watching this holiday?
Yeah, I got to say, I'm with you guys on Christmas Evil. I love that movie. It's on Tubi, if anyone's interested. And it's a free app. They add stuff all the time. Every time I go on there, there's something new. So yeah, I feel like I can't pick that one because it's already been claimed, but it's okay because I love that movie and the sleigh van. Aha! God. But I watched Gremlins because I love the first one so much, and I definitely consider that a holiday horror movie.
Oh yeah.
What else did I watch? Oh, Silent Night, Deadly Night, the first one. Also, the fifth one, which is I think called The Toy Maker. It is bizarre, and
I still haven't finished that one.
Well.
I need to watch that one.
It's
got Mickey Rooney in it, doesn't it? It's Mickey Rooney.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, he's a toy maker. And his I think his name is Joe Petto. And I just think that's the worst name in the world. Because if you really think about it, right? Like, I think obviously they're kind of playing off of like Geppetto, from Pinocchio. Yeah. But
sure.
Your name should never be Petto. Your last name should never oh God.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's just some bad planning right there.
Like, oh God, no.
But
it's so good.
Does that kind of have like a Puppet Master vibe to it? Because it's like the toys evil?
Okay. That's it. and it's not a spoiler, but it kind of is a spoiler, but it's okay. Still track this movie down. Okay. So he ends up making like a kind of like in a Pinocchio sense, right? He makes like the toy, like one of his toys come to life. And yeah, like it does do bad things, but it doesn't mean to, because in my opinion, it doesn't know any better.
Okay.
That like he does bad things, but he doesn't mean it, although that doesn't excuse it. But still, I'm just trying to give some sort of perspective on the character.
Well, it's interesting because looking at the Wikipedia page, the main character's name is Derek, and it's actually spelled the same way as my name. So I think and it came out the year I was born. So I think I have to watch this movie.
Yeah, you do. You do.
Wow.
And it's funny too, because I bought at Crypticon a few years ago, I bought a Silent Night, Deadly Night collection, and it only had number 3, 4, and 5.
Yep, I got that same DVD set. Christy got it for me. I didn't make it to 5
okay.
though. I've seen 1 through 4. I don't remember 4, but I saw it.
Why would that possibly be? Why would that possibly be a collection? Like what?
It was because it was a rights thing where where the rights were tied up, I believe is how it worked, because I know that the first one was out of print forever. And then I spent a decent amount of money, not an excessive amount of money, to get the DVD, and then they re-released it like a couple months later for like $10. I'm like, oh, what a waste. And you know what? And I did the same thing again. And I love Scream Factory, and I love NECA, and they had released and they're releasing those awesome figures, but all of the figures have been exclusive to the Scream Factory sets, with the exception of the Silent Night, Deadly Night one. And I didn't know that when it first came out. So I had to get it on eBay because it sold out ahead of time. So I spent a good bit of money on the Blu-ray so that I could get my Silent Night, Deadly Night NECA figure. And then next Christmas, and they released it in the standard packaging. I'm like, oh, they got me again. So twice I've been fooled by spending way too much money on Silent Night, Deadly Night. I assume it'll happen again when it comes to 4K or when it comes to 8K.
Right. That's how they get you.
That's how they get me. Tamika, what have you been watching that's not horror? I know this is a horror podcast, but what Christmas movies do you watch that aren't horror?
Oh, you got it. Okay. So there's the classic Die Hard. Okay. Because it is a Christmas movie. It is. Damn it. Sorry. I didn't mean to say a swear. And Die Hard. And I exposed my stepdad to The Year Without Santa Claus recently.
A classic. We were talking about that song, I think, on a recent episode. The Hot and Cold song.
Oh my God, the Heatmeister?
Yes.
Oh my God.
So for how excited Derek is, am I to assume that that's a decom?
Actually, no, it's one of the old claymation specials.
Oh, okay.
So it even it's just I know I have a little bit more range, I guess, than even I expected.
Growth and evolution, Derek. It's good to see it.
Yeah, it's
Rankin and Bass.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, the ones that cranked out like the Rudolph specials and Jack Frost, all those great, I think 60s and 70s specials.
Yeah. So good. He didn't really care for it, which I'm surprised by because I thought it would be in his wheelhouse, because he's in his early 60s. So I thought, like he'll love. No. We'll get into my stepdad's feelings on something else we're discussing on this podcast later because I thought that was interesting too.
No, we'll have some interesting family discussions. I got one as well. I did though.
Yes.
Interestingly, well, I did last year when we were talking about it. My dad had a real problem over the last 2 years. I've decided to bring more Christmas horror or like movies that take place on Christmas into my family's Christmas watching. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on Christmas Day, but I'm like, let's kick off the Christmas season and let's watch Batman Returns. And then, him and my mom were having none of that. And then like on Christmas Eve, I put on Krampus a couple of years ago and he's like, I don't want any of this. And he's getting mad at me. And somewhere along the lines during the episode, you can go back and listen to it. It was about a year ago. Scott and Derek suggested that we try showing my dad Black Christmas '74 because we thought he'd like it. And he really liked it. We showed it to him last year. And I was surprised, but he liked it because it was more of like a murder mystery. And so, and he was actually... he was excited for the new Black Christmas. He saw the trailer and he's like, "Oh, that looks good." And so, we'll talk about that more later. But we'll move on to you, Derek. And have you watched any holiday horror movies this year that are not Black Christmas related?
Well, yeah, that's a big but there because those are pretty much the only holiday horror movies I've watched this year. Although Gremlins was on TV, so my sister and I watched a good amount of that, and so a little more mainstream, I guess you could say. But yeah, I definitely consider it a horror movie like Tamika. And that's
you guys want to hear something messed up?
Yeah, go for it.
I have never seen Gremlins. I have seen Gremlins 2 probably about 25 to 30 times.
Whoa!
Wow.
And there's a reason. It's more practicality than anything. I was becoming conscious of movies like maybe around 6 or 7, right around the time that Gremlins 2 was getting its run on HBO. And if anybody remembers HBO as a kid, it was like the same 5 or 6 movies playing on a loop throughout eternity for however long they had the rights to it. So it was always like the same movies would come on again and again. So as a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, I would just watch the same movies again and again. And they weren't, the original Gremlins wasn't part of that rotation.
That is amazing though. I mean, because there's a lot of people that haven't seen the second one, but have seen the first. Like a lot of people I don't think realize the second one exists. So the fact that you've done the opposite is pretty amazing.
I can't believe you've gone this far though, without like it being on AMC and seeing it, or like just like not checking it out.
Yeah, it just hasn't happened. And it's not even one of those ones where I'm like actively avoiding it. It's just whenever I'm thinking about a movie, I want to see another one comes up. So it's one of those ones that's on my list. I'll get to it someday, but it just hasn't happened yet.
If only we had an episode where we were going to be setting goals for 2020 and you could put that on that list and we could hold you accountable a year from now.
It's a shame we're not doing that. That's weird.
Yeah, I know, right?
I don't even know why you'd say that if we're not doing that. That's
so strange.
Jeez, John.
Untapped potential.
So, Derek, so you aside from the Black Christmas movie, so you did see holiday horror movies, but then you only caught part of Gremlins. So I have to assume that you invested time in regular holiday movies. So what did you watch?
Yes. So, I mean, usually Home Alone and Home Alone 2, Lost in New York are on around this time. So I never like really sit down and watch those movies beginning to end, but I catch those movies at certain parts every year. So it was always fun to watch Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern going through that amazing slapstick violence that is so Looney Tunes, but in real life, I just love it every time. And I just watched Joe Pesci in The Irishman, so it was really interesting, like watching him in that movie one day, and then watching him in Home Alone. It's a it's just interesting how he's kind of like the same guy, but he's very different in some ways too. And I think he had filmed Goodfellas around the same time as filming the original Home Alone, so there's always that kind of fun connection there. And then also, I just saw Jumanji: The Next Level, which I did not realize, but is kind of like a Christmas movie because the main characters are all coming home for Christmas break. So there's like Christmas trees in the houses, and they're all coming from their colleges, and all the characters from the first movie are now like spread out. So they come home for Christmas, and that's kind of a central story point there. So definitely not like a full on Christmas movie, but I thought it was interesting how that had a Christmas connection.
I didn't know
lot
that.
A lot of ostriches too. We always seem to watch the Hallmark Channel this time of year. It's always my mom will always watch a lot of it. So I've tended to watch a lot of those movies with her, and they're definitely some. Now there's this kind of controversy with the Zola ads, so I'm glad that they are putting them in there. It was kind of like, I don't know if I really want to. I don't feel too good watching the Hallmark Channel right now, but hopefully there was a lesson learned there, because it was, love stories should be for everybody, I think. So it's good to see. Maybe that's the biggest Christmas lesson of all this year. But so I usually end up watching a few of those, or maybe a few hundred of those a year. And it's funny to me because Hallmark movies, they have like almost this impossible perfection to them, and I feel like they're always like one step away from being a horror movie. Like the Mistletoe Secret, for instance, I was watching that recently, and there's a point there where in the movie where they like take the guy's keys, and like the whole town's kind of in on this plot to show him that this woman does love him after all. So they kind of like drive him out to this isolated area where she's waiting for him. So it's like, man, this could just so easily be a horror movie if you just took this like one left turn instead of a right turn. But I do find those to be kind of like comfort food this time of year. It's always fun to dig into those.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all because of your love of the Disney Channel. But what did surprise me still was when you said you see about a few hundred of them a year.
Well, there's like 40 that come out a year. So
I know. So if you see them, if you see them each, 4 or 5 times, that's crazy. But I do understand it. My mom has Hallmark Channel on all the time as well. I went to visit my grandparents in Chicago, and they had Hallmark Channel on all the time. So I get it. I get it. Slowly converting our society into, I don't know what. We'll find out what their evil plan is later, I guess.
But I do hope they get more diversity and that kind of thing too, because if they are going to be as big as they are, I think it only makes sense to like become more inclusive. And I think there's so many, like, I mean, I'm definitely a romantic in a lot of ways. So I think there's like so many different love stories you could tell that the limits are endless. So, and then you got Lifetime, and you've got all these other networks. It's great. Like, man, try being a horror fan and a Hallmark fan this time of year. You'll go nuts.
I love your enthusiasm for them. Sad, I have not seen. I'll visit my mom and I'll see a Hallmark movie on, but I've never seen a Hallmark movie all the way through. I did notice though, as it, like, and I don't think it's a TV. Like some movies, they like have like a CG like soft focus overlay on like everybody. And it's like it's almost like a white gloss just on the screen, like it's been frosted, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but it's very distracting. If you're looking for one like go-to one that I would recommend, not The 9 Lives of Christmas from 2014. It's got Brandon Routh, so if you're a Superman fan from Superman Returns, you're in for a treat. And Kimberly Sustad, I hope I'm saying that right, but if you like cats, it's a great one. So there's a recommendation for you. Okay, thank you. And then watch like Christmas Evil, and you got a double feature. There you go. Yeah, I do need to show my dad did say he would watch Christmas Evil. I do need to show him that. But yeah, for me, I don't. Oh, Tamika, you got something? Yeah, jump in.
I just wanted to admit something to the podcast. I watched a Night Before Christmas, a night with a K, like a night before Christmas on Netflix, and I'm sort of ashamed, but it's okay. So I feel safe in this trust tree of us all watching Hallmark movies and stuff
Tamika,
like that.
Derek
So
just admitted that he watched like 40 Hallmark movies. I think you're okay.
Yeah, this is a safe space.
If this isn't a safe space, I'm screwed. So
but it was Hallmark level, like kind of absurd, Derek, are you familiar with this movie? Because I feel like this is up your alley because it's got Vanessa Hudgens in it.
Right.
The Disney Channel.
There we go. High School Musical. Yeah. And Heather would like her too. Then
High School Musical.
High School Musical fan.
Yeah.
So I think you would
seen
like
it.
Netflix is getting in on this game too. So they're doing a lot of original content around Christmas time.
Well, and they did Christmas Chronicles last year with Kurt Russell. So that was fun. I did see that one.
Well, yeah. Who doesn't want to see Kurt Russell as Santa?
I mean, is Santa doing the Elvis thing? I mean, did you not like that, Brian? Did you see it?
Okay. So I need you to know how much it hurt. How much it hurt me to not like this movie, because anyone who knows me knows, like, I want Kurt Russell to be my dad and maybe kind of my boyfriend. I don't know. I'm still kind of working around my feelings around that one, but like, I love Kurt Russell. I love The Thing. I love Big Trouble in Little China. I love everything he does. I did not like that movie. I liked him. I liked what he was doing. Nothing around it worked for me. I don't know. It just all seemed really forced. And I feel like the odd man out on that, because it seems like everybody else loved that movie.
I don't know. I think we're saying the same thing. Okay. Because a lot of people I've talked to like recognize that like the movie is not very good, but it's just like Kurt Russell is great, so we watch it. Like that's how I feel about it. Like, I think he was good in it. Like,
and God help me, I'm going to watch the second one because he's in it and Goldie Hawn's going to be in it. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
When does that come out?
It's got to be for next Christmas. Yeah.
Oh, fun. I wonder if Netflix realizes how many people watch that movie just because Kurt Russell is in it. Like, people that maybe don't even usually watch a Christmas, like a feel-good Christmas movie.
I mean, they probably could figure out. They'd be like, this like 1 million, like our 1 million customers who usually only watch horror movies switched to just this one Christmas movie. So,
like, they thought it was a Christmas horror story, but
yeah. I mean, they have the technology. They could figure it out. Yeah. So, for me, I'll go through some of mine pretty quickly. Christmas Vacation has always been, my parents have been watching it since I was little, and we still watch it every year. White Christmas, though, is the number one Christmas movie. I think it's the one I've watched the most. It was another one of those that was on in my house. We watched it so much, we what do you call it, broke the VHS. We had to get another one.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so that's how you knew, like, because when my mom really liked a movie, we would watch it so much that we'd wear the tape out. We'd either have to get another one or move on to a different movie. So there are some movies that are like burned in, like Big Trouble in Little China. My sister loved Independence Day. She loved Jeff Goldblum, so that was always on. We burned through that tape. Sister Act, we burned through that tape.
Ooh, what about Back in the Habit?
No, only the first one.
And this was years before The Nun.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyway, White Christmas. It's White Christmas or bust.
my brother-in-law's family had a tradition of watching that a lot too growing up. So I've never seen it myself, but I know they would watch it every year. So it was a really important movie to them. And I've heard heard good things about it, so I'll have to check that out sometime.
Yeah, I mean, Danny Kaye is really great in it, and I always liked him growing up. And then also he was in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I don't know if anyone's seen that. It's got Boris Karloff. It's it's not. I wouldn't call it horror, but I'd call it genre.
Wait, was that a remake that Ben Stiller did?
Yeah, Ben Stiller remade it, and it had nothing to do with the Danny Kaye one. But I mean, I would highly recommend that if you haven't seen it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway,
what about A Christmas Story? Speaking of Bob Clark.
Oh yeah. You know what? For A Christmas Story, for me, it's one of those movies that when I first saw it, I'm like, what is this crap? And that was when I was real young. And because we watched it at school, and I'm like, that was just so weird. And then they got into the TBS, like, we're going to play it forever. And I kept watching it. And then I realized, like, oh, this is like a horror anthology movie, but on Christmas. And then I realized that, hey, there's a lot of similarities between some of the things that have happened on our Christmases that are happening here. And the more and more I watched it, the more I came to love it. But it wasn't an instant watch or an instant rewatch for us. And then still, though, my mom, I'm starting to win her over. It's only been 20 years, and finally starting to chip away, and she's liking it more and more. My dad kind of likes it now. Christy still hates it. Like she actively will fight to not watch it.
I feel like A Christmas Story it's like that joke that you run into the ground so many times that it becomes funny again after a while. And I think TBS has leaned into that with the 24/7 or the 24 hours of A Christmas Story. I mean, for me, it was always one of those ones where I think I almost watched it more to annoy the crap out of my dad because he can't stand that movie. So I would just turn it on just by chance. He would walk into the room while I was watching it.
It's probably the movie I've seen the most in my life, to be honest, because we always have it on every Christmas. Like my grandpa loved that movie, loved it when the bully got his, another horror connection with Zach Ward playing the bully. And it just, it's like intertwined with my Christmas DNA. I just feel like it's not Christmas without A Christmas Story on in the background. Like, it's rarely would you sit down and like watch it all the way through, but throughout the day, you just end up seeing it multiple times because it's on nonstop. And so, and it's, it just feels like Christmas to me. And the book is really good too. It's based on the book by Gene Shepard. It's like he has a bunch of short stories or anecdotes from growing up. And he also narrates the movie. So it's a lot of that is based on a true story, and it's pretty amazing. So I love watching that, and it just captures like that Midwestern family Christmas experience pretty well, I think.
Yeah, that's
yeah. I mean,
oh yeah, you go ahead, Tamika.
I feel bad because I always end up speaking right as someone else is speaking. I agree with Derek. It's just such a classic, and I have to watch it at least twice during the 24-hour period, just so like it feels like Christmas. And I'm all about, for some reason, quotes, like movie quotes, and I feel like A Christmas Story is so quotable. There's the "Oh fudge." I love that. So good. And I actually know a kid who was dared into sticking his tongue on the flagpole.
Oh.
And it's exactly what it looks like. Like, I mean, we tried to get his tongue unstuck. We had to tell the teacher. She got mad at us. She gave us all detention.
Oh wow.
But I mean, it's not like, we didn't all dare him to do it. It was one person.
But did they double dog dare them or triple dog dare them? There was no triple dog dare?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but there is no triple dog. It's a triple dog dare. But yeah, the ambulance had to come. It was a whole thing.
It does. Sounds like it's straight out of the movie. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And horrifying.
We just could not get it unstuck. Yeah, wow. We're like, oh man, oh god. I remember for some reason this little girl, she was a grade lower than me, but we all had like recess together. It was weird. I'm from a small town. And I remember she started crying. She said, "Oh, the ambulance is going to come and they're going to have to cut his tongue off, aren't they?" It was so sad. It was kind of like traumatizing, like just like the movie. But yeah, I love that movie. It's so good.
I'm picturing the poor kid with his tongue stuck hearing that. Be like, what do you mean cut it off?
Right? Like, I was like, oh no, don't say that.
Yeah, that movie, Bob Clark's like kind of dark sense of humor really comes through in that movie, just like it does with Black Christmas, where a lot of, I mean, Christmas Story ultimately is a very hopeful and heartwarming at times story, but some pretty disturbing things also happen, especially to like Ralph's friends who, you know, whether it's over the phone, which, you know, the mom, like, yeah, just it's pretty messed up in some ways. So it's like, it's very interesting how he was able to sprinkle that throughout his story.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a perfect way, Derek, for us to segue out of non-horror Christmas movies and talk Black Christmas. I'll make sure we have a good bit of time to dive into all three Black Christmases, and so we'll kick things off with the 74 film. And so I just want to get all of my co-host thoughts on it, and even talk about the first time you've seen it. You know, why it's special to you. Bryan, we'll start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with the Black Christmas 74?
So I came into this movie pretty late. I only, actually thinking about it, I never really was one much for holiday horror, at least until pretty recently. And I think Black Christmas might be one of the first full-blown holiday-themed horror movies that I saw. I don't think it was necessarily on Christmas. It might have been around or after Christmas. I think I was just bored one morning before everybody else was up. I think I watched it on my phone, and I just remember like halfway through, like kicking myself for having waited that long to see this movie. This is an absolutely brilliant movie from, as we said, Bob Clark, who also, he's got a very eclectic mix of movies that he's known for. There's this, there's A Christmas Story, there's Porky's, there's Baby Geniuses. But I think where there's a lot of ways that Bob Clark got this movie so right. And I think the number one thing is that giving that Christmas atmosphere was such a big part of it. You know, he starts off with that great iconic shot of the sorority house with all those Christmas lights up. You know, as Billy, one of our, you know, first proto slasher killers, you kind of get the first instance of that point of view shots from Billy's point of view as he's kind of sneaking around the house. You get to see all the different Christmas decorations that in other contexts would be actually very warm and welcoming, but somehow in this context, Bob Clark seems to make them just seem sinister, and like the lights themselves kind of come off as evil. So it's just such a great atmosphere. And another thing is that it, you know, for anybody, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this shortly, but anybody bemoaning that movies are getting too political, this is a movie that 1 or 2 years after the Roe versus Wade abortion case in the U.S. was tackling abortion in a slasher movie, I guess before there were even slasher movies. So, you know, anybody who is saying that horror isn't political or they don't like politics in their horror, but they like this movie, I think must have missed a pretty large chunk of it, because politics are very front and center in this movie. And it's also just a hell of a ride. It's so good. Just the kills are brutal, but not like sleazy. Like I said, the atmosphere is great. Everybody in it is amazing. Olivia Hussey is great. John Saxon, of course. And of course, there's Barb, played by Margot Kidder. It's just one of those lightning in a bottle movies that just is such a great thing that I'm glad that, you know, even though I did come to it late, this is definitely a better late than never, because now it's one that, you know, I make sure I catch at some point every year.
Yeah, I also came to this relatively late too, because I didn't see it for the first time until Scream Factory put out that amazing collector's edition Blu-ray a few years ago. And it just was never, I knew it existed to some extent, but it wasn't like it was on TV a lot, or I didn't really see it being discussed that much. I kind of remember hearing about it when the 2006 remake came out. Like, so I kind of knew about it, but it just never seemed to be part of the discussion as much as it is now. I think Scream Factory really helped put it back on the map. And then you realize, like, wow, Black Christmas actually, because I always thought of John Carpenter's Halloween as like this launching point for the slasher film, but then you realize a lot of that was done in Black Christmas first, and it's like, oh man, this really kind of rocks my world in a lot of ways. But it basically dittoed everything Bryan said. The performances, I think, are what it makes it so endearing. I think it's just a perfectly cast movie. It's kind of like that lightning in a bottle where you feel like everything just clicked. And I think what really makes it work is that Bob Clark's humor still comes through, even though it's a very dark movie, like those phone calls that just set the tone for the entire film. There's still this great humor, like with Mrs. Mack, the landlady, Mrs. McHenry, and the interactions with the sorority sisters. It's very funny at times, even like 1 minute you're laughing and the next minute you're watching or listening to some of the most disturbing things you've seen in a horror movie. So I think it's just a great balancing act of a movie in a lot of ways.
I wish that I had seen the same movie as everyone. I'm starting to feel like I might be broken, but that's okay, because, art is interpreted many ways. And I always try to remind myself of that. Because I really, really, really want to love this movie as much as you guys do. Because I think the way that you're describing it is so beautiful. And I want to see that, I want to see all of those things. But I feel like some of the film is lost on me. I'm not entirely sure when I first discovered this film. I know that it was at least, I would say, at least within the last like 5 to 7 years, because you guys are right. This movie ends up on so many holiday horror lists and just horror lists in general. And I always want to see, like, what everyone's talking about. I want to, be immersed in, the best movies, like the movies that make all the lists. And so I definitely check this movie out. And I will say that even though I have some major issues with the film, I do agree that the characters are so wonderful and lived in, and they do really feel like real people. And I know that seems weird to say because, you're watching a movie, but I love that. I love that when you're tackling material that's kind of set in the real world, the tangible world, that the characters that you're seeing on screen feel like human beings, like feel like people that or you might be yourself. And I do love the I'm sorry. I do love the is she like I guess I would call her like the housemaster, or like the sorority housemaster. She's
house
just
mom.
so funny.
Oh yeah.
The alcoholic, right?
Her, yes, I was gonna say, like, her. I mean, the toilet rum. Oh god.
Oh yeah.
Rum from everywhere. It's just like, that was amazing. And she reminded me of house moms that I had in college. So I loved all of that. But the horror itself is kind of where I feel like it doesn't connect with me. But I do think that the film is absolutely beautiful. And Bryan, you are so right about the aesthetics and how, like, the Christmas lights even look gloomy, like that. Those red lights on the wreath on the door, every time there's an exterior shot, I see that wreath, and that's what I focus on for some reason, because it's just like it's just all red lights, I've never seen that before, and they just like the way they glow. It's just, I don't know. There's something to that. Definitely, I didn't really consider that before, but yeah, even like the tree and all that like angel hair all over it, like it's just so, I don't know. It doesn't make you feel in any way like warm or jolly like Christmas should, which obviously makes sense. The movie is called Black Christmas, but yeah, I like, how do you guys, because I'm curious, I hope I'm not derailing the conversation. I feel bad. Like, okay, so how does the horror play for you guys? Like the killer, like Billy, and like the way they like the bodies get discovered, and then like that shot at the end. Like, how does that play for you all?
So for me, this movie is all about just like, I'm trying to think of, because I feel like everybody says this and it becomes a cliche, but I've already spit out a bunch of them already, so I'll give another one. It's very good at just building a sense of dread and then maintaining it for the whole movie. It's, he's in the house, and that's kind of taken like that Hitchcock approach to where like, the bomb is in there. In this case, Billy is the bomb, and you're waiting for when and how it's going to go off. And they, like, I think some of the creepiest stuff for me is those phone calls, like just how vile and crude they get. Just kind of makes your skin crawl. And, it even says it on the poster. If this picture doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight. I think that's what it's going for. It's just, you're constantly waiting for like, when is he going to strike again? And how is this going to manifest itself next? And I just think it maintains that throughout the whole movie really, really well.
Yeah. The phone calls are definitely the creepiest part for me. Not only the things that Billy says, but just the way that he says them. There's that delivery in his voice, the way the voice goes from high pitch to like guttural to just indescribable. It really is it's like nothing else I've ever heard in a movie. Even nowadays, like when we have all this more advanced sound design equipment, I still haven't heard anything quite that chilling in a movie. So that kind of just set the tone for me for the whole movie. And I think that to me is the scariest part. And then also, like Bryan said, just not knowing when he's going to strike and knowing that he's in the house and it's so invasive and you just don't know when he's going to strike. And he just seems so animalistic, like, and it's very ambiguous too. You don't really get all of the questions answered, which to me is maybe the scariest thing of all, because there are some big question marks at the end of the movie. And it kind of makes you think, like, it's just very unsettling because there's really no resolution to anything. It's very, I think that might be the most horrifying thing of all. And maybe that was intentional. But yeah, I think for me, it's definitely the phone calls though. Overall, they just freaked me out.
And Derek, it's funny you mentioned the ending because I think narratively it works really well. Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it. We're close to 40 some odd years at this point. So
there's still time.
Yeah. But in the end, you realize that, Billy is still on the loose. They hint that you think one of the characters was Billy, and then you find out at the end that he's not. And while I think that works really well for me on a narrative level, there were some people who logically were thinking like, who the hell taught these cops how to secure a house? Like if he's still in the house and nobody thought to maybe look one floor up. So I get the slight complaint about that, but also at the same time, like it's just so creepy that I don't care. And it still works and makes for kind of a satisfying ending, especially kind of with the end credits rolling. And if I remember correctly, there's no music. It's just like the breathing playing the whole end credits. And it's just, it's so creepy.
Yeah. And the phone ring.
Yes.
I can't forget that. I mean, for me, this is a movie that, and this has happened over the course of my life, right? I saw it when I was younger. It was grainy. It was on VHS. I wasn't really paying attention, and I don't know how old I was, but I was young enough not to appreciate it. And then years later, I heard it keep coming up, and I saw it at a film festival where I was a captive audience member. It's on 35 millimeter. The speakers were blasting, and I think I think seeing it on the big screen in some cases is imperative. These days, it's easy to look at your phone when you get a notification on WhatsApp. It's easy to kind of check out if you don't have the lights off, if you don't have your stereo all the way up. So, I would recommend, Tamika, if you want to give this one another chance at some point, see if it's playing on the big screen, and watch it when those phone calls are blasting. And like I said, where you're a captive audience member. I think this movie is hugely influential. It's interesting that it came out, around the same time as Texas Chainsaw, because both came out in 1974. And, this shares some of its qualities in terms of, less is more. We think of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when you ask someone who isn't super familiar with it or hasn't watched it that often, in their mind's eye, it's this bloody, gory movie, but really it's not. Most of it's off screen. Most of it, there's no blood. And Tobe Hooper was going for a PG rating. And that's kind of how this one goes, right? The worst things are the things that, you don't see. It's knowing that Billy's there and people don't realize it. It's that phone call. I think, it's interesting because they showed this, Joe Bob showed this on his Red Christmas marathon. And the thing I love about the Joe Bob marathons is that it gives people a chance to see a movie because it's, a random movie, doesn't say ahead of time, that they may not have ever seen. So I'm glad that so many people got to see Black Christmas because, he just reaches a wide audience. Some people got to see this for the first time. But it was interesting how he really didn't care for the movie all that much. He had given it, I don't remember, 2.5 stars, 3 stars, something like that. Whatever the case was, he definitely didn't regard it as important as a lot of people see it today. And, I'd say that he is right that not a lot of people had seen it in terms of it didn't get a big theatrical, even though it was released by Warner Brothers, it didn't do very well at the box office. But that doesn't mean that it didn't reach the right people, right? So often your horror filmmakers, your people like us who love genre. I mean, we see the movies that not many people see. And so even if this movie wasn't influential to the masses and thought of on the same level as, your Exorcist or whatnot, it certainly reached the right people. And it's kept that cult status for a good reason.
Yeah, I feel like Dr. Sleep is kind of on that same wavelength. Not a lot of people saw it, but I think the people who did, like me, really love it and will continue to sing its praises for a long time. And I think that's kind of what's happened with Black Christmas. Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, it's not, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later. In some cases, it's not about, movies aren't necessarily made for a wide audience. In some cases, the audience isn't going to reach, the audience isn't everybody in the world, right? If you think about, for our listeners and, for my co-hosts, I don't know how many pitches you've done for different creative projects or whatever the case may be. But in some cases, when you see those pitches, one of the questions that's asked is, well, who's your audience? And it can't be everybody. Be realistic. Is your audience, people from the United States? Is it men and women from age blank to blank? Is it, this community or that community? Very rarely do filmmakers say, well, or do filmmakers make a film that has this wide audience of people? That's what studios do, right? They design these, 4 quadrant, we'll release this movie and we'll make $1 billion. Disney is, they have it down to a science. But a movie like Black Christmas or a movie like Crimson Peak, it has a small audience. So it always amazes me when people are surprised that a movie doesn't do extremely well at the box office or when a movie doesn't reach everyone, because that's not exactly how it's designed.
I think this, and is a good case. And we kind of mentioned something similar with Dr. Sleep, where like, I'm so happy that they gave Mike Flanagan the money to make a 2.5 hour movie that, didn't have the word or the phrase "The Shining" in the title. And, it just wasn't made for everybody, but I'm glad that he made it and that people loved it. Does anybody else have any thoughts on 74? Otherwise, we'll move on to Black Christmas 2006.
I'll just say the eye through the door hinge is the stuff of nightmares.
Oh, yeah.
It is really great. And it's interesting then how I'm just going to jump into it. It's interesting how overblown that was. I'm just going to go right to it for Black Christmas 2006, because I've seen it before. I've seen it a few times. Honestly, I have forgotten a lot of it, and I watched it again today before we recorded, and it's amazing, having seen, basically one right after the next as I prep, that they just took some of these things, said, hey, this like one scene in 74 that was really great, let's just show it 10, 15 times, and like that's the eye scene in 2006. So you know how I feel about the movie already. Derek, why don't you officially kick us off and give us your thoughts about Black Christmas 2006. When did you first see it, and what do you think about it?
Well, it's not hard to answer when I first saw it, because I watched this for the first time last night. It was a movie that came out when I was in high school, but it came out on Christmas Day in the US, and to be part of like my family Christmas back then, but I got to watch it with my dad and my sister and brother-in-law last night, and it was quite an experience. I think you hit the nail on the head, because everything that's subtle about the first one is further explored and amplified in the 2006 remake. Like, all the questions that weren't answered are not only answered, they are fleshed out, pun potentially intended. And I don't actually, in a weird way, I don't really mind that. I actually, like, this movie is so bonkers, but it leans into the gore and the exposition so heavily and wears it proudly as this Christmas decoration, this bloody Christmas decoration all its own, that I actually find the movie to be quite creepily charming in a lot of ways. Like, it's definitely it's not subtle. It's not really remembered as fondly as Bob Clark's film, but I think that they really made it their own while definitely incorporating a lot of elements from the original. And I know Bob Clark gave the movie his blessing, and he was like kind of involved with some of the creative stuff, where he kind of at least he kind of gave it his own. Okay, this is I'm okay with this existing. I think it works on its own. Before he tragically was killed in a car crash not too long after that. But I kind of like this. I mean, there's a lot of eye gouging, a lot more eye gouging than I expected. So it's very much a 2006 horror film, but it has a few surprises up its sleeve too. So I wasn't always pleasantly surprised, but I enjoyed it more than I didn't. That's for sure. But is that sentiment shared amongst you, you all?
Tamika, what are your thoughts?
Well, I saw this in theaters, so.
What, did you see it on Christmas Day?
It was. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I went with my quad mates. So there's back then. Wow, I have to really think about it now. So there's 3 girls in our little tiny room. That's including, well, no, not including me. So there's 4 of us in one room, and then there's like a room connected to ours. It's hard to explain. I'm just going to skip that. And there were 4 girls in that little tiny room. So there's a lot of us. It's a lot. And there's, at the time, it doesn't exist anymore, the AMC Commons 9, but it was literally across the street from where we lived. So the memories, 1,000 memories. Um, I gotta say, I agree with you, Derek, that it's funny because I was gonna say this movie is so 2006. It really is. And it's hard to explain what I mean by that unless you were so alive and well in 2006. Like, I mean, I know that jump scares are, prevalent in some horror movies now, but they were also prevalent back then as well. And there are a lot of like kind of like jump scenes and like kind of weird editing. And yes, lots of like eye gouging, and there's like the human flesh Christmas tree cookies. Oh God. I really enjoyed it the first time, the first viewing, and I think that's because, I have like nostalgic memories tied to it. I was with my roommates, it was the whole thing. But upon the rewatch, which I hadn't done until recently, in fact, last Friday, ooh, ooh,
I love that reaction.
Those flesh cookies aren't tasting as good now.
They're not. They're not. No, like the writing sticks out to me a lot now. And I know for a slasher that it's not so important that the characters are likable, but I mean, these girls are just so. The movie is really mean-spirited, kind of.
It is. It really is.
And I just can't abide. I can't. I just can't abide with it anymore, I guess, because that really just rubbed me the wrong way and it took me out of it. But I will say that the kills are still very good. Definitely what you want in a slasher, I mean, it's kind of the point. So the kills are still good. And yeah, those cookies, my God, I still can't get that out of my head. Like, oh, no, what are you doing? No. Oh, God. But outside of that, it doesn't really do like, like it doesn't really, like, I guess it's just a slasher. Like it doesn't try to like do anything outside of that. And if you're into that, that's completely fine. And I think that you'll really enjoy this movie. But I think where I'm at now, I need there to be some sort of graduation, like next level slasher. What you got? So that's kind of my feelings on Black Christmas 2006.
This was an interesting one for me because I do agree that there's some great kills. I mean, the cast is killer, but I think you hit the nail on the head with it. The characters aren't really all that likable. It's in stark contrast to what they do in the 74 version is they take their time to like build these characters, to show these relationships. There's that comedy that Derek was talking about that's infused in it. And it works in making it feel like a believable scenario. Here it just, everything happens very quickly. The runtime's almost the same as 74, but this feels like a much longer movie. I think in part it's all the backstory. I certainly didn't need a bunch of backstory. When I saw 74, I liked how ambiguous it was. Similarly, I mentioned with Alien, I think one of its strengths is that they don't over-explain things. I think demystifying the killer certainly hurts this movie. There are some great kills. It feels like some of these people are made of Jell-O, in that I didn't think an icicle falling from that height could go right through your eye, all the way through your head. I mean, I need to be more careful if that's how it happens, because basically an icicle dropping from 10 feet could just kill anyone at any time. There's definitely an obsession with eye gouging and eating. And I mean, it's well executed. So it does have some things going for it. I am curious, though. I know there was an unrated cut because I have this on DVD and it's unrated. I didn't see this in theaters. Tamika, to the best of your recollection, how close is the theatrical cut to the one that's like on Amazon now, or where did you watch it when you just rewatched it?
Oh, I'm not entirely sure I know that answer.
Yeah, because I was curious how much got cut out. Like, I'm surprised how much they showed. So I'll have to go back and look. I'm assuming it's pretty close.
And there was
I think so.
There was a lot of studio interference as far as the final cut of the movie. Apparently, just according to my Wikipedia research here, but also some other sources that are linked in there. There's like a European cut that's actually shorter than the North American version. So there's some like alternate kill, like an alternate kill and an alternate ending between those two. But the Weinsteins actually interfered with Glen Morgan's original ending. Like, he actually wanted to end it a little more as an homage to the original film. And so there's that aspect of it, where the whole like hospital scene where it kind of turns into Halloween 2 is almost a little more, that was more like studio pressure. So because there's a character that I feel like I wish they had gotten a happy ending, because I feel like they totally earned it and they don't. And it makes me so angry. And originally that character was going to have a happy ending. So that I would have loved to have seen that original version. And then this is the part that I remember as just watching these commercials on TV and the trailer that was going around at the time, that they filmed a bunch of footage that's not in the movie. Like, they went and did pickup shots that the Weinsteins wanted to do, where they like put in, like, remember the Christmas tree lights that were like on an electric contraption, and they're like pulling somebody into like a garage or something like that. And there's like a shotgun scene and like a frozen water scene. So there's all this stuff that I remember from the marketing materials. And I was kind of thinking that in the back of my head. I'm like, well, I wonder when it's going to get to that part. But it doesn't exist, because that was all just filmed for promotional materials. And
that's always the worst.
Yeah. So like it just seems like it was almost like Billy kind of, butchered, it got the final cut that Morgan wanted to do was compromised to some extent.
Yeah, the unrated version clocks in like just under 2 hours. So it's like an hour 45.
I don't think I saw that one.
That feels about right to me, because I feel like it was about the same amount of time, although to be fair, it's like 13 years ago. But yeah, that feels about right to me.
Yeah, I saw the theatrical cut, I'm pretty sure. So I'm amazed that that's what made it to theaters. Like, it's pretty excessive.
It's the Italian horror holiday story. I mean, there's a lot of eye gouging.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
my God.
Yeah, an excessive amount. Like, maybe the most. Maybe the most I've ever seen.
And eye eating as well.
Yeah.
But what, Brian, is this a annual watch in your house, or is this not on your Christmas wish list?
Dude, I haven't even seen Gremlins. I'm going to see Gremlins before I see this movie. So
priorities, huh?
I don't know, man. Like, the more I hear about this, the less I feel like I need to see it. It seems like it's Black Christmas by way of like See No Evil, that WWE Kane movie. And I saw that and I wasn't a big fan. So I think I might be good on this one.
It's almost so, to me, I feel like it's almost so bonkers. It's you have to see it to believe it, kind of. Like, it is way more mean-spirited than I expected. And I think part of that is that it was in 2006, but they really go there with Bill, not only Billy, but you have the whole character of Agnes, who's only referred to in the original, that becomes such a huge part of the story. And I will say, as excessive as like the violence is in this movie, Morgan did some really interesting things with restraint, because there's some great like reverse jump scares, like where you think like in the sanitarium, which is named Clark Sanitarium, I'm guessing as an homage to Bob. But the Santa boots that are actually just from a regular Santa, and there's a lot of like, look at the classic bathroom mirror thing where you think someone's going to be behind them. I mean, they actually did play with what you would expect, so that I feel like they actually did do a kind of a nice job of throwing a change up every once in a while, and then like the next scene would have a bunch of eye gouging, so they would make up for it. But it is very, very interesting. Actually, I kind of like how it almost goes Scream 3 at one point, where you just have like 10 murders in 15 minutes, and you feel like Ghostface is on a rampage, and there's this kind of the house or the people under the stairs vibe to it with people in the walls. I feel like it just checks the boxes of like so many different horror movies that it kind of really grew on me in a weird way. So maybe I just am a little crazy. Who knows? But
no, I mean, I don't think this movie is a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, if you're looking for a holiday slasher, I mean, that's one of those things that, Brian mentioned that he didn't watch a lot of holiday horror movies. I mean, there's not a lot of good ones. I mean, there really aren't. And I can even imagine people writing off, like Silent Night, Deadly Night. Like, I mean, the movie's fine. But I think there's very few great Christmas horror movies. And so, honestly, if you were to rank all of them, like this would probably rank higher up on the list.
That's an interesting point. I mean, it's definitely less accessible, I think, than the original. Like, this is one that you can't really watch with grandma necessarily, but
this is true.
I feel like it almost loses some momentum by doing the flashbacks and explaining the Billy story so much.
Sure.
But with the whole Agnes thing, like they even keep you guessing about who the real Agnes is, because there's a lot of kind of mystery to it, and then until there's not. It's very interesting. I'm almost surprised. I think if they had left it open for a sequel instead of having to change the ending, I wonder if they would have gotten a sequel to this, because it seems like the kind of movie where it's almost surprising that we haven't had a Black Christmas sequel to this point. But who knows? Maybe we will.
Where exactly do you think it could go? Or, well, I guess it should go. Like if they were to do a sequel.
Well, if they didn't, if it didn't end the way it did in the cut that is out there now, I think you could. It's this 2006 remake almost Billy just is everywhere. So he's not really as tied to the house where he could follow anybody really to any house. I guess it's like any sequel would just be another creepy person in the attic, whether it's like a new sorority. Like, I don't know why another sorority would move into that house, but maybe the rent's really low or something. I don't know. But with the hospital story, they kind of show that like these people will follow you no matter what. And I know they're kind of taken there too, but it is, Billy and Agnes are almost like these Michael Myers in this one. It's very relentless, and it's much more in your face, I guess, than the original, which for better or worse. But yeah.
Well, I'm glad you like this so much.
Yeah. It fits right in with Rudolph and an elf. Just wedge it right in there.
You got to introduce it to your family. So I'm glad we could help with that.
Yeah, that was, I think everyone had a good time with it. I know there's some parts of the story where you're kind of like, is this really happening? But
yes, it is
along for the ride. So, and we have a new recipe now for cookies.
Oh, great.
No.
Okay. Well, we have gone through 74, 2006, so we're going to move right along to the new Black Christmas that just was released to theaters. Before we do, I just want to give a spoiler warning. I know it hasn't been in theaters long, so we will. I think the only way to discuss this movie is to really jump into some of the finer points of the plot, so we're going to do that. If you'd rather jump out, we don't blame you. and go check out the movie and come back and check out the rest of the episode. Otherwise, if you're here with us, we're jumping into it. So, Tamika, we'll start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience watching Black Christmas 2019? Who did you see it with, and what do you think?
Okay, so I caught a matinee of this today because it's Super Tuesday. And interestingly enough, this is a rather packed audience, which was, I didn't expect that. But I did unfortunately have to go by myself. But because it was a packed crowd, I didn't feel like I was by myself. And I noticed that a lot of the audience was female, and or identify as female, and were like of a certain age. So I thought, okay, like, because I always wonder what, like, I guess demographic breakdowns, like what attracts certain demos, or I hate saying demos, like certain, like, I guess certain age groups or things like that. So I felt like I was kind of slightly like, oh no, I was definitely the oldest person in the audience. That's okay. But I let's start with the good stuff. I really like how political this movie is. A lot like the 74 version, which is the original, but so sorry, I didn't mean to say version. It's very political, and I actually didn't expect that because, again, I try to keep away from trailers and stuff. And I appreciated that. I like seeing this progression from like Scream Queen to Final Girl to, this, wherever this goes in future films. So I love seeing that progression, and for better or worse, because it gets kind of haywire at times, I did really appreciate that. I thought it was very not timely, because these issues, like, I don't want to say certain words. It's not to maybe like trigger anyone, but there are assaults that happen. There's an assault that happens, and there's a lot of discussion around toxic masculinity. And I thought that was really interesting, because you don't really see that in too many, outrightly see that in too many horror films or just films in general. So I was interested in being a part of that conversation. And I like the girls. Again, I like their friendship, and I didn't feel like the movie was mean-spirited, unlike the 2006 film. So that definitely put me in a better mental space than when I had to revisit the 2006 movie. And yeah, so I think that's mostly like what I really enjoyed about the film. I will say, as far as any like cons go, that I wish that such serious topics weren't at times just discussed. Like they were discussed more. I guess, actually, no. I wish that they were better executed. And I thought at times certain themes were brought up, but then that's kind of where they're left, and they didn't really, unpack what should have been unpacked, especially because you're dealing with things like sexual assault and things like of that nature, like with the frat guys and stuff. It's such a serious topic. I feel like then there needs to be a level of, like, a special level of care with things like that. And I'm not saying that in any way that this is not discussed properly or anything like that. But I just wish that if we're going to discuss really serious topics like that, that they were there's maybe more of a stance, where sometimes I feel like they did, and then other times they would just completely not, and just kind of skim over it. But yeah, that, as far as the movie goes overall, I enjoyed it more than I ever thought I would. I definitely, from the other girls and the women, I should say, in the audience, they certainly enjoyed it. There were some moments where there was clapping. There's a little bow and arrow action, little longbow action. That got some claps. So I think I have to watch this one again to fully wrap my mind around it, because I'm kind of in the middle. So I'm at like a 2.75 for now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with it too. I definitely enjoyed it more than I didn't. I think it was a really fun movie, but also while still tackling obviously these really serious issues. And I think it was cast really well. I feel like the sorority has this effortless back and forth, especially when they're just kind of hanging out. I feel like they feel like they've lived together. They feel like they have this history. And of course, part of that is a tragic history too. And so I think it deals with those themes really well. And I think it's really important that it keeps that message first and foremost in its story. So I feel, and I think it had some really like genuinely shocking moments in it. I know obviously there's always that, we seem to always have that PG-13 versus R debate where it's like, well, if it's, some people think if it's not R, it's not going to be scary enough, but it's really all about the execution and the framing and the pacing, and where the 2006 movie is just like, we're going to go so far into our territory that your eyeballs might pop out. This one is a little more, I think, harkens more back to the original movie, where it is a little more about atmosphere and kind of building up that story a little bit, because we have that initial kill scene, and then it kind of settles down for a while, and then it builds up into that third act where we do see these moments sprinkled throughout. And I think the pacing of it's really good. And I actually jumped a little bit at some parts. And you mentioned the crossbow. I think that whole scene was really, the home invasion scene with the crossbow and everything, I thought was really well staged. And I thought it was scary. Like I was on the edge of my seat a little bit, but I also feel like the third act, I feel like the third act's kind of like, you're either going to be along for the ride and you're going to love it even more, or you're going to be like, oh, it's a little too much. And for me, it was almost a little too much. Like when it takes the turn into more supernatural territory, I almost feel like it's not as beneficial to its story. Like I feel like it could have made more of a statement by not having the supernatural aspect of it, because that's even more realistic to what's going on in society now. And I feel like there's already enough pieces in place where they didn't need that. And I feel like it almost kind of takes away from some of the momentum that it had. Like the whole supernatural part of it, I think it's kind of cool, but to me it's like, oh, it would have been even more of a statement without it. So, but overall, I mean, that being said, I really enjoyed it and had a good time with it. And I think they should be proud of what they made. I think they had less than a year to make this movie, like beginning to end. Like I think the director, Sophia Takal, on Twitter said that they had like a month to write the script, and then they had like 8 months to make the movie and get it out in theaters. So the fact that it exists like this is pretty amazing in itself. So yeah, I had a good time, and it's always fun to have a horror movie come out on Friday the 13th, while we're waiting for another Jason movie. This is, I think, fun to have something to look forward to this time of year.
So I guess I'll go next. So yeah, I saw this. I guess opening day. I saw it last Friday. Did a matinee. Did it specifically because I was planning on talking about it here. And I think part of the issue that this movie might have suffered from inappropriate expectations from me going into it, because I purposely, like, when I realized I was going to see it, I didn't look at any of the trailers. I really didn't read much up on it beyond what I had already seen about the kind of. There was already some controversy building because the people who made the film said that they were specifically trying to talk about things like toxic masculinity, things like sexual assault, and the culture that perpetuates that. And I was kind of all on board for that because they are very real things. And again, going back to the original Black Christmas, like if you say you don't like your movies political, you're not watching the ones that were out in the 70s or 80s or 90s. And so I guess I was expecting a little bit more of incorporating those elements into something that was a little bit more moody like the original. And even in that opening scene, I thought that's kind of what I was in for, in terms of, you get that stalking scene, you get that really great visual of the girl getting killed while inadvertently making a snow angel. So like, I thought that's kind of the road it was going down, and it took a very different tact, and I don't think I quite ever got over the kind of cognitive dissonance of where it went compared to where I was expecting it to go. So I'll be honest, I walked out of it not really having enjoyed it. And so I will say, kind of social media proved why it's both the best and the worst, because it was a learning experience for me in terms of the people who have seen it and who have themselves been through sexual assault and really got a lot out of it. It was really eye-opening to see like what they were able to get out of it, and why, even if they said, this might have been heavy-handed and it might have been awkward in places, but like, people who have been through the situation that we've been through don't have a movie where like you can pump your fist at the end. And that was something like, it was really interesting to read that. And it was kind of one of those situations where it really opened my eyes to really thinking about like, is this something that's going to benefit a rewatch? And I think it might, considering like kind of having those different expectations going into it a second time. And I might see it again, and I still might not like it, but that doesn't change the fact that it's very cool to see the people who are really enjoying this movie, and the fact that I do think it's interesting, Tamika, that you said that the movie was packed today. There was barely anyone there on Friday, so I think the word of mouth is getting out to the people who will enjoy this movie. And I hope more people get to see it and do get to enjoy it. And I hope the people that are being a-holes about it just take a minute to kind of like think about it before they decide to put whatever stamp they want to put on it. Because you're free to just not give your opinion. It's okay. You can just see what other people's opinions are before you just like throw vile crap on the internet. So all that to say, this, as of right now, this was a movie that didn't quite connect with me, but I do think it's probably worth another watch.
I think it's interesting because we've gotten to a point now, I've talked about this on other episodes, maybe not in as much detail as I will now, but we've gotten to the point where, people have been alive as long as, they were born kind of into social media with a phone in their hand, and they see like outrage culture, and they don't realize the consequences of what they're saying, or that they don't care. And it's great because social media allows us, on one side of the coin, to be able to rally against injustice, and it gives people a voice where they didn't previously have it. And in that way, it's great. But then it's also surprising and unfortunate that we see on the other side of the coin that it's used to really kind of, spew hate and keep people down and a very vocal minority can cause so much hurt to whether it's, you know, people writing about, in this case, writing about horror or making horror movies, just because they don't make them necessarily the way that you would make them, or that they aren't writing things with the same opinion that you have. You know, I remember very vividly growing up that, you know, I'd be picked on, I'd be excluded because I liked horror, because I liked comic books. People would say, hey, you can't play with Jonathan because he's into this stuff and it's a path to the devil. So I actually, like, people couldn't play with me, or I couldn't go over to people's houses because I like this stuff. And so unfortunately, you know, we've gotten to a place where, like, you know, it's cool to be a geek, and where essentially the geeks have won, and people who are, you know, either some people forgot about that, or people who are growing up now don't realize kind of how good they have it, where we're in this age of horror and media and creativity where, you know, you have options. And that's what I find very funny about the situation, and unfortunate about the situation with Black Christmas, is that, you know, the stance I take with any remake when it's announced is, I have the original. I'm not going to get up in arms. If you announce an Alien remake tomorrow, I'm not going to go up in arms. The first one's my favorite. I always have it. And, you know, so I think that, you know, I think that culture's, like I said, is kind of a little crazy, which is the instantly, you know, rage every time, you know, a remake is announced, or something that we don't have a lot of information for. It's not going to ruin the experience that you have with the original Black Christmas. It's always there.
And Jonathan, I think you kind of really hit the nail on the head for me with, you know, talking about how, you know, as a kid, you kind of felt like an outsider and had to deal with kind of the ramifications of that. And I think that's what really pisses me off about where things are now, because, you know, the horror community is one that I often see, and one that I think really touts itself as kind of being the community that brings in all the lost souls, and like, we're inclusive, and we like to be the ones who are like, well, if nobody else will accept you, we'll bring you in. That's kind of our thing. But then we just do stuff like with the reaction to Black Christmas, where, like, I'll be honest, it didn't feel like too much of a minority in terms of, like, they were vocal, but there were just a lot of vile things being said for people who just liked a movie. And you know, I say people, women who liked a movie, and just a bunch of guys decided that they hated that, and that, like, no one's saying you have to like this movie, John. Like you're saying, like, no one says that this has to be a movie that you champion, or that is, you know, your favorite movie, or even a movie that you like. But just, like, you also can let other people have it and let other people enjoy it. And I know even that's become a cliche, like, you know, let people enjoy things, but, like, damn it, it's true. Like, just let women enjoy things. It's a pretty simple thing. I don't get why this has to be so complicated.
Yeah, it's like I said, I mean, obviously some of it's surrounding the fact that it was named Black Christmas. You know, I firmly believe that for business reasons, you know, they got the rights to it. It had to be named that to kind of, like, get that exposure out there. There's a certain value to that name. And Derek mentioned this, you know, and I agree as well, is that, you know, in some cases it's a perception thing. You know, when we see indie darlings that make it through the festival circuit, it's like, wow, like, look what they were able to accomplish, like, with a small budget, you know, and that budget can be over $1 million, but, you know, it's still an indie with a smaller budget and some creativity, and they didn't have, you know, the same resources that studios do. Look what they were able to put out. And so we see those indie darlings, and that's essentially what happened here. It's not, you know, apples to apples. Obviously, there was a little bit more money because it was coming from Blumhouse. But, you know, Sophia Takal, I mean, she had, you know, she talks about, you know, and she had mentioned on Twitter, as Derek had said, that they essentially had 30 days to write this movie. and they had 8 months to film it, and they had to get it ready so that it would be out for the holidays. So I mean, I think they acknowledged that this was fast, but like they were given a shot, like they had to take their swing. And I think it's always cool to root for people like this, right? Like tell your story. Like we don't need to see another an exact remake of 74. So, you know, and I think it's interesting too, because, you know, in this, you know, in this landscape, companies we see like Blumhouse are getting a little more open to diverse voices and to telling different types of stories. Even, you know, they knew this probably wasn't going to be a big hit for them, but I am glad that they took the risk and that they invested in this, because, you know, we've seen the same types of stories in many cases from the same types of filmmakers, you know. So when people say that they don't, you know, want to see movies getting more political, or that in some cases movies have an agenda, you know, I mean, they kind of have, but it's only been, you know, mostly from kind of like one side, and I don't even mean necessarily, you know, men versus women. I mean like white males. It's predominantly Hollywood. And so if we want to say that, hey, you know, there's we want a female-centric horror movie, or what Jordan Peele's doing, where he wants to, you know, cast mostly, you know, black actors, and people were outraged about that. I'm like, just let them do what they want. Let them tell the story the way that they want. They're not hurting anyone, and you can vote with your dollar. If you don't want to go see it, don't see it. But, you know, as a lifelong horror fan, I'm excited to see what new voices are going to come out with, and I'm excited that they're developing new types of movies for new types of horror fans. I always talk about how, you know, The Walking Dead expanded it so that even, you know, grandparents would see some of the goriest stuff they've ever seen. And I think it's cool that with Black Christmas, they have made this for a young teenage female audience and can get them into horror. So now, you know, Tamika, you're talking about, you know, how the theater was packed. Well, all of those people, maybe it's their first horror movie, or maybe it's what gets them into horror. It's like, oh, this Blumhouse company, I wonder what else they make, and start going down, you know, that rabbit hole. And now they're a lifelong horror fan. I think we should be more accepting of different types of movies and bringing people in. The horror community is great, and like I said, I still do think it's a vocal minority compared to all the people out there that watch movies, and all the people there that love horror. So I think we need to continue to kind of spread that positivity and that message, and hopefully over time, it'll turn heads more and more online.
And it's already surpassed its budget. Like I know it didn't top the box office or anything, but it made enough money to cover at least the production budget. So it's not like it didn't make any money. You know, I know theaters, you know, you'd see pictures of theaters on Twitter where someone was like, well, I'm here and I'm the only one here. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's a Thursday night, it's a school night. And not every, I've been to 100 movies where I'm almost the only one there. You know, it's nothing new. And I know it's opening weekend, but people are going to go see this at different times. Like matinees might be busier for this kind of a film. And, you know, and I saw this with my sister and brother-in-law, and there was only, you know, 5 or 6 other people there, but they were really into it. Like it seemed like everyone was really enjoying it. I mean, it's not like the biggest box office bomb. The perception is, some people may want you to think that, but it's, you know, it's doing decently. And like you said, yeah, we're so spoiled right now as horror fans. Like we have, like you said, we can get really gory stuff on TV, but we can also get other things. Like what if they came out with like a PG Halloween movie where it was like it was like a kid's movie and Michael Myers was out there? Like I'd go watch that. Like I want to see different takes on these stories, and not all of it has to be this, you know, specific style of story. I want to see different voices. I want to see different points of view. That's what makes it interesting. That's why you do a remake, because if you try and do it too similar, you're going to get ripped anyway, because people are just going to say, well, why does this even exist? I have the original. So I feel like with Black Christmas in particular, it's cool because we have 3 very different takes on the same story. It's almost like an anthology series at this point. And I know 2006 definitely sticks closer to that model of the original, but it also does its own thing a lot. So I think it's a cool thing, and we should be open to that. And any, just the fact that we're getting any new content like this is a good thing for the genre. It's good for horror. And how fun is it to be able to go see a horror movie in theaters in Christmas? Like, we used to complain about how we can only see horror movies like in August and January. And now we literally just had maybe the best summer of horror theatrical releases ever. And now we're still having a major horror theatrical release in December to cap off the year. Like, how cool is that? So I know it's hard to focus on, take away, or it's hard to not let the negativity ruin your day, but there's a lot of positivity with this as well. And hopefully it's only a matter of time before that outshines. I think that will endure longer than the hate.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this movie is going to hopefully have legs. I mean, we're entering the holiday season. Things are definitely going to start winding down. Like, I mean, almost to a halt pretty soon. I can already sense it. And you're going to have a lot of time, and you're going to be hanging out with friends. And I definitely see people watching this, next weekend and the next weekend. And then you have all of January, because at least the first couple of weeks of January are pretty slow because it's the new year and everything, the machine stopped and now it's slowly, whirring its wheels back up. So I definitely don't think this movie is a bomb. It'll definitely, find an audience either theatrically, sorry, or definitely in the, on home video, which seems like a antiquated thing to say, but I think it is home video, right? Like,
yeah, I would. Yeah, well, home video still counts.
Down at the Blockbuster.
Yeah.
And I will say too that I'm looking at the IMDb page. Derek, I think you had intimated that it was doing pretty well. It's already made its money back. It was a $5 million budget. It's at $7.5 million worldwide so far. So it's not breaking any records, but it's already made its money back and then a little bit, then some.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, Blumhouse they make their movies too small to fail. They know that they're going to make their money back. There still is marketing to factor in. Mm-hmm. So they're not completely in the black yet, but by the time it hits VOD and Blu-ray, like I said, they should be fine. And this, like I said, this goes back a little bit to, it doesn't have to be a huge hit. And it's like I said, it's like Crimson Peak. I was talking to somebody about that recently. Like Del Toro made I don't know if he made it for 20 or 40 million, but they gave him that much money for like a gothic horror that's Hammer style. Like, that is a super limited audience. And so, people are like, oh, well, it didn't do that well. Well, it wasn't made to be, like a Pacific Rim style blockbuster. And so these movies aren't going to bring in a ton of people. What I do think is really cool about the new Black Christmas is that it has something to say and that it is positively impacting people that are seeing it. For people that, have been assaulted and see that movie and they feel like this helps give them a voice, or, it helps give them strength. These women that created Black Christmas, like, they created art that impacted people in a positive way. And they can see that almost immediately. In some cases, that doesn't happen at all with films. In some cases, movies don't have much of a message. So I do think it's cool that, like I said, that they didn't set out to reach out to everyone. They had a specific message. They had a specific audience. And it looks, for all intents and purposes, that they were successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too where, they gave it a shot, and I don't think everything necessarily works in the movie as far as the killer subplot of it, like the horror part of it. I think the message really works. I think I'm not 100% on board with the way the third act, and it's there's some things in the third act where I'm like, I almost feel like scaled down it would have been a little better, because so much of the movie is played so grounded and realistic, and I think it's really effective that way. And I feel like it's by taking it into that other realm, it almost not necessarily takes away, but it's like, oh, I wonder what it would have been like if they had really played it even more realistic in the third act as well. But it still ties in with the theme of the movie. So I think that works. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it, just the fact that it exists is interesting, and maybe it could have benefited from having more time to get made, but they want to get it out on December 3rd, Friday the 13th in December, and they met that deadline. So that in itself is kind of a Christmas miracle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're definitely, it definitely could have used some more polish. I don't think anyone from you to myself, director, I think they know that had they had more time, they could have had a more polished product. I did forget to talk about, so I will mention that I did take my mom and dad to go see this one because they liked the trailer. And they did have a good time with it. I think, my dad did, he had seen the original, so he was expecting something a little more straightforward along the lines what you mentioned, Derek. So when he got thrown for a loop when it went into a supernatural direction. I certainly, like I said, think it could have benefited from a little more polished time. And like I said, I do think that, especially the third act kind of is hurt a little bit from that. And then also, there is, we know that, the PG-13 rating was picked because of the audience they wanted to target. I would have loved to have seen what this movie could have done, though, if they wanted to, push it in a more R-rated territory. Again, it would have needed more time for polish. It would have needed to go, in a different direction than they intended. But I also would have been happy to see that movie.
And Jonathan, I was thinking the exact same thing. I know that's another tired argument that's out there. If you can make good PG-13 horror movies, but this is definitely one for as over the top as the villains wind up being. I think like if their deaths had been allowed to be more over the top as part of the finale, I think that would have really helped it, at least for me. But I also get that then that's, where you're getting into this isn't necessarily for me, and if you get into the R-rated territory, then most of the people who it is for might not be able to see it. So it's a tricky area.
Yeah, the 2006 one is it definitely. If they had gone more that route, you have to imagine. I'm sure other people may have seen it, but then a lot of people that have seen it maybe wouldn't have. So there's kind of that trade-off there. But yeah, I think it was April Wolf, the co-writer, who on Twitter, someone had said it felt like, and you might appreciate this, Tamika. Someone said it felt like if the last 20 minutes of 2018 Suspiria happened on Riverdale, and she was like, "Oh, that's actually the greatest compliment." I'm like, I could see that, yeah, or it has that Riverdale vibe to it, which I'm all on board for. But and that is kind of tying in more with the younger audience too. So.
Oh, Riverdale!
I couldn't resist.
Have an episode of that.
Which actually, if you're watching Riverdale right now, there's a very school cult storyline that had me thinking a lot about Black Christmas. So, if you enjoy one, you might enjoy the other.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, with that, this episode of Corpse Club is going to come to an end. I will say, though, that I'm curious to see who else out of our listeners have seen all three. What do you think? Feel free to hit us up. Let us know what you thought of all the Black Christmases. If you haven't seen them, if you're listening to us and you've just seen the 2019, please do check out the 74 and 2006 versions as well. And if you haven't seen the new one, give it a try. Let us know what you think. And Bryan, you need to see 2006.
No, I don't.
Need to join us. We'll come up with some mechanism to force you to see it. I don't know what it'll be, but some episode based mechanism where you have to watch it. It'll be like it'll be a bonus episode, And I've threatened Scott with this, where I'm just going to call him one day and it'll just be the episode. I'll be like, welcome to Corpse Club. And maybe one day we'll do it for you, Bryan, but yours will be a live commentary for 2006 and you would not have seen it.
Is this going to be like a bunch of goons are going to like burst into my apartment and like strap me down to my chair, Clockwork Orange style, and just be like, okay, we're watching Black Xmas now. Have fun, buddy.
Yep. That's it. But the after that, it could be Gremlins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, see, so there's always a little.
Can I at least watch Gremlins second so that like I get the Black Christmas out of the way and then get to watch what I'm sure is going to be the better movie?
Of course.
We don't know better, but maybe more uplifting for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, we would like to thank Bryan, our engineer, for helping us out every single episode. Thank you, Bryan. And as always, we want to thank our listeners, including those who have signed up for a Corpse Club membership. Make sure to visit corpseclub.com. You can check out our latest episode, our backlog. You can also sign up to become a Corpse Club member. We have a bunch of different membership benefits. You can get a t-shirt, a pin, pick an episode topic. The episode topic could be Bryan talking about Gremlins and Black Christmas 2006. It's always an option.
Yes.
Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Every rating and review really helps. Thanks to everyone who has rated and reviewed us so far. You can also find us on Google Play, SoundCloud, and all of your favorite podcast providers. If you want to get in touch, you can reach out anytime. We're at contact@corpseclub.com. We're on Twitter at Daily Dead News and at Corpse Club. And we're on Instagram and Facebook under Corpse Club as well. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay scary.